This is Kol Birama, the podcast of Congregation Ramat Raz 929 Tanakh Project. Join us each day as we study a chapter of Tanakh, building towards completing all 929 together. I'm Rabbi Yoni Zolti, and I'm glad you're here. Shemot Chapter 8. In the previous chapter, we explored how the plague narrative functions as a cosmic confrontation over the fundamental nature of reality itself. The repeated divine declaration, V'yadeu Mitzrayim ki ani Adonai, and Egypt shall know that I am the Lord, announces epistemological transformation. Egypt must be taught who truly governs the world. But how exactly do the plagues accomplish this? The answer lies in a divine pronouncement of remarkable audacity. Uvchol Elohei Mitzrayim e'eseh shifatim ani Adonai. And on all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgments, I am the Lord. The plagues constitute a systematic theological prosecution, a divine lawsuit against Egypt's entire religious worldview. Egyptian religion embodied what might be called cosmic immanentism, the conviction that divinity permeates and animates natural phenomena themselves. In their view, the Nile was Hapi. The sun was Re. Frogs manifested Heqet. Cattle embodied Apis and Hathor. This was not symbolic association, but ontological identity. The distinction that we make between a thing and the god of that thing simply did not exist in Egyptian thought. When the Nile flooded, this wasn't caused by a god. The flooding Nile was the god, acting in the world. Pharaoh himself occupied the apex of this theological system. He was literally divine, the living embodiment of Horus, the earthly son of Re. His authority derived not from political structures, but from his identity as deity incarnate. Through his rituals and rule, he maintained cosmic order itself. To acknowledge a transcendent god beyond nature would therefore have undermined both Egyptian cosmology and Pharaoh's divine legitimacy. This is where the plagues come in. Against this Egyptian ideological edifice, each of the plagues demonstrates that these supposed deities possessed no power whatsoever when confronted by the true creator. The first of the plagues, or perhaps the preliminary sign, the crocodile, often translated as a snake, that is, transformed from Aaron's staff, establishes the thematic overture for everything that follows. In Egyptian theology, the crocodile occupied a profound religious and political significance. Sobek, the crocodile-headed deity, embodied the Nile's raw power, its capacity both to sustain and to destroy. More significantly, the crocodile served as a potent symbol of Pharaoh's sovereignty. Pharaoh was depicted with crocodile imagery to demonstrate its mastery over Egypt's most dangerous predator, their control over chaos itself. When Aaron's staff becomes a tanin and devours the staffs of Pharaoh's magicians, the symbolism is unmistakable. The very creature representing pharaonic power proves subordinate to Israel's God. Pharaoh's symbols of divine authority are literally consumed. This establishes what will unfold. Egypt's most revered deities will be systematically humiliated. The next plague, the plague of blood. The Nile was not simply important to Egypt, it was Egypt. Without its annual inundation, Egyptian civilization could not exist. Hapi, god of inundation, received elaborate worship as Lord of the Fish and Creator of Grain. Temple reliefs depict him with pendulous breasts, symbolizing the Nile's nurturing abundance. But the god Osiris maintained an even more intimate association with the Nile. As Egypt's most beloved deity, his mythological death and resurrection explained the river's cycles. His murder paralleled the dry season when the Nile receded. His resurrection corresponded to the inundation's return. His dismemberment into 14 pieces was linked to the Nile's branches dispersing throughout Egypt. The god's annual resurrection guaranteed not merely agricultural fertility, but cosmic renewal itself. And yet, God commands a comprehensive transformation of the Nile. Every river, every canal, every pond and pool will become blood. And the effects were devastating. The Nile becomes undrinkable, the fish die, an unbearable stench pervades. Hapi and Osiris, the guardians of Egypt's most sacred resource, prove unable to preserve even the most fundamental necessity. Their sacred river, praised as the source of all life, becomes unusable. Instead of life giving water, it produces death and stench. The gods to whom Egypt entrusted survival stand exposed as powerless. In the next plagues, frogs, the plague targeted one of Egypt's most intimate religious symbols. Heqet, the amphibian headed goddess, presided over fertility and childbirth, domains central to Egyptian religious life. Frogs symbolized fertility because they emerged in vast numbers from the Nile mud after the annual inundation, seemingly almost miraculously generated by the life giving river itself. The association between Hecate and frogs was absolute. Pregnant women wore amulets bearing her image, seeking divine protection during the dangerous process of childbirth. Hecate was invoked at birth to ease labor and ensure safe delivery. In fact, the hieroglyph for her name literally means frog, a creature and goddess that were nearly indistinguishable. In temple reliefs, Hecate appears at divine birth, breathing life into newly formed beings. The plagues, however, inverted this benevolent symbolism into a nightmare. The frog spread into houses, into bedrooms, into beds, into ovens, and kneading bowls. The devastating irony is inescapable. Bedrooms, where procreation occurs, Hecate's very domain, becomes uninhabitable due to her own sacred animal. Food population areas enabling population growth become contaminated. Even the royal palace offers no sanctuary. The fertility goddess proves utterly incapable of controlling her own sacred creature. Instead of blessing, her symbol becomes a curse. Moreover, a profound poetic justice exists here. Pharaoh decreed that Israelite male infants be drowned in the Nile, weaponizing the Nile to prevent Israelite fertility through infanticide. Now, the Nile disgorges an invasion of creatures sacred to the very goddess of fertility and childbirth, a divine retribution executed through Hecate's own symbols for Pharaoh's murder of children. The next couple of plagues, the wild beasts, pestilence, and boils, were an attack on the various animal deities of Egyptian theology. Egypt worshipped a number of animals: Apis the bull, Bastet the cat, Sobek the crocodile, Sekhmet the lioness. The plague of wild beasts inverts this framework. Creatures that Egypt venerated become instruments of destruction. The sacred Apis bull of Memphis was worshipped as the living embodiment of Ptah and Osiris, not a symbol, but a god incarnate dwelling among humans. The bull lived in luxury, received daily worship, was consulted for oracles, and upon death was mummified with royal honors. Hathor, the cow goddess, represented maternal care and divine nurture. When pestilence strikes and all Egyptian cattle die, the deities supposedly embodied in these animals prove utterly powerless. The plague of boils strikes at Egyptian medical expertise, understood as divine gift from Sekhmet and Isis. Yet when Moshe throws furnace ash skyward, Egypt's healing deities prove ineffective. In fact, most tellingly, we're told that the magicians themselves, intermediaries with healing deities, find themselves as afflicted as the common Egyptians. They can't stand because of the boils, which are overwhelming. The gods controlling disease and healing cannot protect even their own priests. The next plague, hail. Egyptian deities supposedly governed atmospheric phenomena. Tefnut governed moisture, Shu governed air, Nut the sky itself, and yet when hail strikes, it manifests as a supernatural phenomena, with ice mingled with fire, two opposing elements united in judgment. The atmospheric deities cannot prevent this assault. Their impotence is emphasized when God announces the plague in advance, offering Egyptians opportunity to protect their property, and yet their own gods remain utterly silent, offering neither warning nor protection. Finally, I want to mention the plague of darkness. This plague strikes at Egyptian theology absolute pinnacle. Ra, the sun god, occupied unparalleled supremacy in Egyptian religious consciousness. His daily journey across the sky embodied the triumph of order over chaos, existence over non existence. Egyptian temples were architectural expressions of solar theology. Elaborate mythology explained the sun's nightly battle with the serpent Apiphis before emerging victorious each dawn. The sun's reliable rising guaranteed cosmic stability itself. If Ra failed to rise, existence would collapse into primordial chaos. Crucially, Paro's entire claim to divine legitimacy derived from solar theology. Paro was the earthly incarnation of Horus, literally the living son of Ra. His authority stemmed not from political power, but from his identity as the solar deity's terrestrial manifestation. Every assertion of pharaonic power rested on this solar connection. To challenge Ra was to challenge the theological foundation of pharaonic rule itself. And yet, for 3 days, an eternity in Egyptian cosmological understanding, Ra does not rise. Instead, there is a darkness so thick that Egyptians cannot see one another or rise from their places. The sun god proves utterly powerless. Paro, who claims to be Ra's son, sits impotent in darkness, unable to command even a ray of light. His solar divinity collapses into obvious fiction. Yet the final clause delivers the theological coup de grace. But for all of the children of Israel, there was light in their dwellings. Light and darkness obey not Ra, but the Lord. The supposed sun god, the foundation of Egyptian cosmic order and pharaonic legitimacy, proves merely another created element, utterly subject to the Creator's command. Thus, the plagues systematically expose Egyptian theology fundamental error, conflating natural phenomena with divine beings, worshiping creation as creator. Ra cannot preserve light because he is not light's source. Hapi and Osiris cannot protect the Nile because they are not its source. Heqet cannot control frogs. Apis cannot preserve cattle. All prove impotent when the true creator demonstrates his sovereignty. The repeated divine refrain echoes throughout, Vidatem ki ani Adonai, that you may know that I am the Lord. This theological education corrects Egypt's fundamental ignorance. When Paro declares, Lo yadati ta Adonai, I do not know the Lord, Egyptian theology left no conceptual space for a transcendent creator. The plagues dismantle this ignorance through a devastating demonstration. When darkness finally lifts and light returns, it does not do so because Ra has triumphed in mythological battle, but because the true creator has chosen mercy. This is the knowledge that the plagues impart. I am the Lord, creator of heaven and earth, judge of false gods, and there is none besides me. Thank you for joining today's learning. See you tomorrow for the next chapter of Tanakh.